Hello everyone, my name is Tim Hansen, and today I'm going to be going over firmware updates for Sophos UTM on AWS. So this topic is going to be split into two separate videos, and this would be the first of two, and it's dedicated to answering really a single focal question, and that would be, how do I update the firmware for Sophos UTM on AWS? And I'm going to answer this question really by showing you first how running Up2Date on AWS differs from running it on an on-premise device, and then secondly, I'm going to go through the point and click of actually initiating or starting the whole update process. And then in the second video, I'm going to look at what actually happens to your running instances after Up2Date gets rolling along or gets started. So how do the updates actually get applied to your instances and in what order? Which may be of some importance to you if you're using something like auto-scaling and maybe have multiple UTM worker nodes operating in the same VPC. So look for that on my YouTube page and check out the second video if you're interested in learning about that. All right, so for all intents and purposes, there are 5 deployment scenarios for UTM on AWS. One is a single instance. Number 2 would be a high availability deployment, either in cold or warm standby. Number 3 is, of course, the auto-scaling solution. Number 4 is when you've deployed auto-scaling with one CloudFormation template, and then after the fact have also deployed the egress gateway or the outbound gateway using a separate CloudFormation template. And then the 5th would be the quick start all-in-one template available directly from the Amazon site, which includes everything. So the UTMs in auto-scaling, the Elastic Load Balancer, the outbound gateway instances, the Bastion host, etc., etc. Now, if you're not sure whether you fit into scenario 5 here, this would only apply to you if you've deployed your environment directly from the Sophos outbound web proxy on AWS Quick Start, like so. So moving forward, please do make note of which scenario applies to you, because it will dictate ultimately which CloudFormation template you're going to need to grab or download in order to upgrade your stack or your environment. So how do we run Up2Date when our appliances are on AWS? So for a single standalone instance, the Up2Date mechanism on the UTM is really no different than it would be for an on-premise hardware, software, or even a virtual machine-based appliance. You would click the update button, the UTM would work its magic to apply the upgrade, and once it's all done, the appliance would reboot. Simple as that. For all other deployment methods, however, so for high availability, auto-scaling, and auto-scaling with the outbound gateway, the way Up2Date works is probably a little bit different than you're used to. And this is, of course, due to the fact that we're utilizing auto-scaling within AWS. And if you're familiar with auto-scaling, then you know that auto-scaling uses a launch configuration, and within that launch configuration is a specific AMI or a machine image. And it's really this machine image of the UTM firmware that locks you into a specific firmware version. So when we update the UTMs, it's not simply a matter of updating the firmware on the running instances. Rather, a new launch configuration needs to get created, and then the existing auto-scaling group needs to be modified to use this new configuration. Now, lucky for us, once we actually initiate the update process, everything is automated, and all of this gets done for us through the magic of CloudFormation. So let's say you have a stack deployed, really any deployment type so long as it's not standalone. If you look on the web admin under Up2Date, you'll notice there's no update to latest version button, similar to probably what you're used to seeing. Rather than this button, there'll be a brief explanation with some links, which ultimately explain that in order to update the firmware, you need to update the CloudFormation template or CloudFormation stack manually. And this will be the same method you're going to follow for everything excluding that single standalone UTM instance. So how do we do this? How do we update our CloudFormation stack manually? The first thing we're going to need to do is to get a copy of the latest CloudFormation template. It's within these templates, which are going to have references to the latest AMIs, and of course the latest AMIs are going to contain images of the latest UTM firmware on them. So for high availability, auto-scaling, or even auto scaling with the outbound gateway added after. So essentially deployment types 2, 3, and 4. We can get the templates directly from Sophos. Whereas for the quick start auto scaling with outbound gateway, so type number 5, we're going to need to get this directly from Amazon. Now, regardless if you're getting the templates from Sophos or Amazon, there's two ways, or really two places we can download copies from. And I'm going to show you both of them for both vendors as we move along here. So the first place to get the templates from is going to be from each company's respective GitHub page. So for Sophos, we would go to the public Cloud Teams GitHub page here. And you can make note of the URL if you like. All right, so the current template will always be reflected right here on the landing page, but selecting one of these will launch us into the AWS console to fire up new stacks, which of course is not what we do not want to do. Most of the templates we actually want are here under UTM, with the exception of the outbound gateway template if you are using deployment method number 4 and do want to upgrade the actual outbound gateway instance itself rather than the UTM. In which case you can go into EGW, then 1.0, and download egw.template. Okay, so let's back out of here. And we'll go into UTM and then scroll down to find the deployment which is applicable to us. So for me, I'm using HA in cold standby. If we open up that, we can go into raw. And once in raw, we can right click and save it somewhere locally on our computer. All right, now I will just make mention, if you are using deployment method number 4, because the UTMs and the outbound gateway do get deployed separately using two different templates, if you are looking to do a complete upgrade, you will need to download and update both the auto scaling and the outbound or egress gateway stacks individually in separate steps. Okay, so just something to keep in mind when determining which templates you need to download. All right, so for Amazon, what we want to do is we want to go to their quick start GitHub page here, and we'll want to navigate into templates, and then the template we want to download is the Sophos template here. You would download it the exact same way I just showed you on Sophos's GitHub page. And don't worry about the need to update these other 3 templates. These are nested templates that will actually get updated automatically for you when running the update for the main Sophos template. Okay, so this is one of the 2 ways we can get our hands on the latest CloudFormation template. The second way to do this would be to simply download the template by punching in the URL for the S3 buckets that store them. If you were to take the URL and throw it into your browser bar, this would just start the download of the template into your downloads folder automatically. So for the URLs to the S3 buckets, if you want to use them, I'll bring them up for you here. Here's one for high availability with cold standby, one for warm standby, one for auto scaling, one for the outbound gateway instance itself, and then of course one for the AWS quick start to auto scaling with outbound gateway. Now, on a side note, if you are wondering what the difference is between the cold and the warm standby templates, I'm fairly certain the only difference is that when you open up the template within CloudFormation, this option here is pre-selected to either warm or cold, depending on which template you're using. Everything else should be the same, just an FYI in case you were curious about that. All right, so assuming you now have the required CloudFormation template, we can move over to our AWS console and figure out how to apply it to our stack. So I have here a couple different deployment types. One is auto scaling with outbound gateway, and the other is high availability with cold standby. Now, if you're looking to update your quick start auto scaling with outbound gateway deployment, similar to what I explained a few minutes ago, you will probably be seeing 4 stacks that exist for this. You can effectively ignore the first 3 nested stacks. These will get updated automatically with the main stack. The stack you want to be upgrading is the base template at the bottom here, and this is going to have the exact name as you entered it into CloudFormation when you initially created the environment. Okay, so for me, because my quick start auto scaling with outbound gateway deployment is already on the latest version, I'm going to go ahead and perform the upgrade on my HA deployment. So what you'll want to do is to click on the stack name like so, and then up at the top right, select Update Stack. And then you can either use the second option and point CloudFormation to the spot on your local computer where you've saved the template, or you can use the third option and paste in the URL to the template's location on S3. So that would be the exact same URLs I showed you earlier. For me, I'll link the S3 bucket. And then once you click next, it will bring up the same sort of screen you would have seen when you first deployed the template, and all the parameters you indicated previously will be selected, excluding the authentication token or admin password. These will be hidden. And so unless you have some defaults here you purposely want to change, click next. And then again, unless there's some specific reason you want to add or modify anything here, click next again. And then right towards the bottom here, please do read the change set and understand what changes are about to be made to your environment. So although Sophos does provide the templates, we obviously cannot account for any changes which might have been made previously to your environment, which might be inadvertently reverted or even removed as a result of running the update. So assuming you're okay with the changes, go ahead and click Update. And CloudFormation at this point will do its thing, and in no time your UTM should all be on the latest firmware version. Excellent. So that is it for me today. I'll say thank you for joining me. Do tune in to part 2, where we're going to be looking at how CloudFormation is specifically going to apply the updates to your instances now that we've pressed the update button. If you do have any comments or questions, leave them below. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.